Happy Sunday, y'all. Welcome to another edition of the Dooms and the Don'ts. We're starting with today recaps Insecure. And today we're joined by Jayha, and we are excited to discuss this Daydreaming episode to see, where we landed with that. So stay tuned, grab something to drink, and we'll get started shortly. All right, Jay's here. Hey,
Yo,
why you stop? I was like, why are you?
my fault, yo. Yo, I've been doing it the other way all week for work, and so it was just like, yeah,
I feel
yeah,
you.
yeah, it was.
Happy Sunday. How are you doing today?
I'm good, yo. How are you? Oh yeah, let me let you go ahead and put the question up.
Oh yeah, you're
Oh
right.
yeah, yeah,
What would
yeah,
I do without you? For real. Every week we go through
yeah. I had already
it.
forgot.
All right. Yeah, what up, Red? Thank you for sliding through.
Oh, Red is here.
Um, yeah, he is. All right, so this week we had the decision daydreaming, what path you going down episode. And one of the things that I love is that they didn't do, a 30-second daydream, right? They went all in. And I think I daydream a lot, so and
Yeah.
use that to fuel my decision making. So for me, I think them taking the time and being elaborate with it was just a really good take. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the subjects they hit on within the episode that we've been talking about that are really important. One is that they really centered estate planning, right? And one of the episodes, one of the shape ups that we've done, the shape up is a in barbershop program that we do at Lee's Barbershop in Southeast DC. But the last in person one we did before the pandemic hit was on estate planning and grief. And it was around after the tragic death of Kobe Bryant and how important, of course, it is for us to have our affairs in order. And so for them to tackle that and spend a lot of time on that, I think was just so important to see. It was a lot of good elements in that. So what were your thoughts on that?
First of all, it was hard to watch,
Yeah.
and so shout out to my homegirl Ladonna. She out in Cali, so I'm glad that she's up. Yeah, it was hard to watch. Um, I'm my mother's only child, and so all the responsibility falls on me. I don't have like a sibling from her to
Yeah.
just like lean on and be like, okay, this person got it, this person got it, and so those conversations are very hard to have. And when her father talked about how I just don't like dealing with the reality that I worked for 50 years and I have little to pass on to my children, I think it kind of also let me have a little bit more empathy and sympathy for a generation before me and how they feel about going through that process themselves, because it's a reflection upon your life, and there might be some things that you might not be so proud of.
Right.
But we don't have that conversation, not even enough. That conversation is barely had. I mean,
Absolutely.
therapy and wills were for white people when I was coming up.
Yeah.
The white and the rich, like just plain. And I thought that was a good episode to have. It came across natural. It didn't come across like it was forced. It doesn't, one thing I like about Insecure, it doesn't come across like intentional viral moments or whatever the case may be. But I thought it was very heavy. It showed how each sibling responded.
Ooh, that was so
Um,
good.
from
And I think
the younger sibling, the middle sibling, the older, like it broke it all down. So yeah.
I agree. And same thing, only child. So having those conversations, we begin to have them this year. Maybe the last couple of years, but really kind of trying to get a plan in, and it's still very difficult. Different parents respond differently to the urgency of this, conversation that has to be had, right? I think one of the great things that they did was, and I think kind of a note to us is like bring in a mediator, bring in someone that's, not related. Kelly coming in was perfect. And saying, hey, I can make this a little bit, you can take your frustration out on me versus, it being an emotional roller coaster between you and your children, especially Molly. But then even seeing Molly, like, kind of holding it together throughout the process, and then just really kind of taking that frustration or that energy out at the end of the night. It's like, it's draining. And I think showing that that the process is not necessarily easy, even if the outcome is what you desire, it's sometimes still, the process is still very draining.
Yeah, the conversation itself isn't that easy.
Mm-hmm.
So the outcome shouldn't be assumed to be easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to have that conversation and to go through and then to have it after a tragic situation of your parent just had a stroke.
Right.
And unfortunately, it takes those things for us to have that kind of conversation in our community.
Yeah.
So that part right there, I was all feeling. I mean, fantasy aside, that
Right.
scene right there was a lot.
I agree. I agree. I think for that, we got our money's worth after the show. Just for that, seeing that visualized is so important. So, um, yeah. And then Kelly coming back and saying, this is something I want to help people with. It's just, that's really I started with today's theme and how we really began to like really break down these walls of like information access and culturally, connecting to our community. I think is really important for people to like find a way that they take their gifts, their talents, things that they've studied, and really make it accessible to our community.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great. So kudos to the team for tackling that. Um, Red said he helps do a lot of drafts and testaments for clients and have had those convos. That's dope. That's dope work. It's so important. So kudos to you for doing that. All right, so the daydream. What were your thoughts around?
It's interesting because I mean I daydream a lot too, right? One of the cartoons I used to watch when I was like in middle school was Bobby's World. And so I kind of felt like I had a Bobby's World moment watching Issa kind of do her daydream of what decision that she was going to go with, which one is going to be more fulfilling in the heart, which one you're going to feel with. I found it interesting because I'm starting to really, really zoom in and pay attention to this relationship with Nathan
Mm,
and what it represents because each time she found herself coming home to Nathan. And there has to be something of a meaning there. What does that mean?
yeah,
But it definitely says that she's not done with her
yeah,
situation with Lawrence.
yeah,
I don't know if it needs to be as of right now, there needs to be a conversation. I don't know if there needs to be another go round. I'm not, even though I've been Team Lawrence, I'm not
right,
so quick to say it needs to be another go round, but it
right.
definitely needs to be a conversation.
I absolutely agree. She definitely needs to have that conversation, and I think enough time has passed for her to have it be, I think sometimes when you're still going through it, still a lot of emotional connections that you can't really see the outcomes as objectively as you should be able to. I think, there's a conversation that needs to happen with Lawrence, and there's also a conversation that needs to happen with Nathan. You know what I'm saying? I don't think she's being really upfront, honest with that. And it's something really difficult to navigate, but at the same time, they say, hey, as much as I feel like I'm all in here, I do want to make sure there's a clean emotional slate for us to build on. You know what I'm saying? And that may take me having another conversation with Lawrence.
But I try to wonder though, Charlotte, like, is there such thing as a clean emotional slate? I
No,
mean, I
maybe not clean slate, but a stronger foundation because she's never going to be all in with Nathan or anyone. You know what I'm saying?
okay.
Until she um, really addresses, what she wants out of that situation. I think one of the things, it's two things. Like one, she should need, the closure from another person. She should be able to kind of navigate that for her own self. But, I think as we saw kind of in the preview, it's like their circles are too connected. She's going to run into Lawrence, eventually. So she needs to be in a space where she's very clear about, what she wants. But to your point, or like her coming home to Nathan, It was really good to see that kind of emotional settling, even at the beginning of the episode. I don't think that part was a daydream when they were lying.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I think that was real, but just how comfortable they begin to kind of find themselves. But I think it kind of goes to this point that you made a couple weeks ago. This kind of really still been ringing in my head about it takes work wherever you put your energy in. It's going to take work, and there's no way of circumventing the work that has to happen for that.
Yeah, I mean, it also reminded me that Chris Rock joke when he was like, fellas, you ever had your woman just stare at you for a long time at dinner? And he's like, because you weren't her first choice. You know, it's like, and it's, and when I saw that, my heart was feeling for Nathan because in each scenario, here go Nathan giving the college try, and Issa's mind is elsewhere. And I don't care who you are, whether you want to admit that or not, you've been in that situation, and you've been
Yeah.
on both sides.
Yeah.
You've been on the side of Issa, you've been on the side of Nathan.
You're so right. And I think one of the things about it though, right, and nobody at, our age in our 30s is probably our first love or our first, who we thought we would be with, right? But that doesn't mean that the first choice was the right choice, right? And I think that's really kind of where I am. you know, when you're going through these daydreams, like what fruit would I bear with, having X as a partner and having Y as a partner? I think one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is that with both scenarios where she came home to Nathan, um, before Lawrence popped up, it's like she still had these very great choices before her. No choice, no path was wrong. It's not like if she went with Nathan, then she will sell out, or went with Lawrence, it would be different. So I think both options kind of say the ball is really in your court and what you want it to look like. But I think one of the other messages that kind of stood out for me is that how grounding love and support can be, and that doesn't necessarily always come in a traditional relationship, but like what that looks like for you to like have a foundation to grow, to explore, to really expand your vision and have a vision to say, hey, I have a great support system around me that allows me to flourish.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that, and I think about Issa and her choices, I think about season 1. She felt like she had no choices. She was at a dead end job. She wasn't going anywhere. She was miserable, and we forget that. We got so caught up in talk about how Lawrence was on the couch. We forget also about Issa's misery and what she was going through because she just wasn't happy. Even if Lawrence would have been working, Issa wasn't happy.
And she was depressed too. We kind of talk about what
Yeah,
depression looks like in different people. I think there's a case to say, hey, Issa was equally as depressed.
no question about it. I don't ignore that at all. You know what I mean? I voiced the fact that people didn't pay attention to Lawrence's depression enough, but I would not say that neglecting that. I do feel like Issa was going through it. Hell, I even maybe say a tad more because she had to kind of work through it, going to work and pay the bill, right?
Yeah,
It's interesting how we are in those positions, and then a few years later, or when we get to a point, we also have like this good problem because there's not a I mean, besides the fact when Nathan handed her the plunger, but to be in a position where you have options is what you were aiming for, and we forget that.
That's real.
Hence the show Insecure, right? Like, when are you ever, any of us ever going to have the satisfaction? And I think what Molly said at the end about it's never going to be all or nothing, but we are so prone to think all or nothing.
Yep.
Like, is this decision the right decision? And does it really have to be like the episode last week said? Does it have to be the right decision? Does it have to just make sense to you?
Yeah, I agree. And I think they keep honing that down where, it's giving us, I think the show gives the viewers a mirror and we kind of pick out what part is kind of really resonating with us. But I also think that Issa's relationships, and especially after you just brought up this point about, um, how she was navigating Lawrence, it's also a mirror to her, like where she is. And so I think she's in a space where she is doing better. And then there's, it kind of brings up, is this self-sabotage, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know what I'm saying? That I feel like a lot of us, who come from, you know, working our first way through, our own trauma or generational inheritance, you know what I'm saying? Trying to work through that. And, just always feeling like this other shoe is going to drop. And like, how much do we want to perpetuate that? You know what I'm saying? Or how much we want to say, hey, it doesn't have to be how we thought it was going to be. It can look different for us, and be open to those possibilities as well.
I just like to go here on record and say at this very moment, nobody wants to be Nathan.
Ooh.
It's like that, just keeping it a buck. Like nobody wants to be Nathan. And if there's ever been any kind of complaint that I've heard some homegirls say or women say or read that, men don't open up and men don't want to invest like that, Nathan is your reason why. Because no man wants to be in that scenario. We've heard of that so many times,
Yeah.
of investing in a woman and she got this guy she can't get out of her head. Whether it's an F boy, a Lawrence, or whatever, like no guy wants to be Nathan at this very moment. I'm not talking about what their future can be. I'm not talking about what happened in the past. I'm talking about at this very moment in that episode, there are some men right now like, no, that is not what I want. That is not the scenario I want to be in. They don't.
Especially with him doing the work, I can definitely see that, and I've never really thought about it from Nathan's point of view, and what that feels like, especially with him working through all the obstacles he's had to work through too, to kind of be in a point to be emotionally available to Issa, which is beautiful to watch. You know what I'm saying? Just beautiful to watch his own personal evolution, regardless of the outcome. You know what I'm saying? Just like this is what work looks like from overcoming, these emotional barriers that I've had all my life, and saying, hey, this is what I want to open myself up to. So I think even aside from that, my only pushback is like, he's doing the work, but yeah, I feel you. Like if you're doing all that and it's not being received in the way it needs to be received, yeah, that's tough.
It's not, and we don't know that other side. We're not watching the TV show. Nathan doesn't know all the things that Lawrence did and this and this. Like he don't know all that, right? You know what?
Yeah.
You know what Nathan would feel like at this very moment. He's going to feel like, yo, I put in all this work, and you still think about this dude that went and had a baby by somebody else. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many scenarios that are like that. There's so many conversations that men have amongst each other where we talk about that, and they're worried because, listen, Lawrence is a good guy, but there are a lot of women out there who can't get the bum dude out their head. You know what I'm saying? There are a lot of women out there that can't get the F boy out their head.
Yeah.
While you're sitting with this Nathan-like fellow. It's just not a scenario that nobody wants to be in. And it's somebody, I think what people got to understand is what Molly said. Somebody is going to get hurt when you're making adult decisions. And that's something that I took from Molly crying in that car. There is no way you're going to be that guy in a situation of growth without somebody getting hurt.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the flip side is that how do we be emotionally responsible to the people that we love and care about, even if it doesn't, work out in an ideal situation. I think that's kind of the lessons that I think we should have learned at this point, like in dealing and dating and navigating. Like, how do we be, again, like Issa needs to be upfront with Nathan about how she's, maybe not to the degree how she's feeling, but that there's still some unresolved stuff there. And yeah, so yeah, it's tough navigating those decisions, but I was glad to see. Okay, and then also too, there was another part of that was like the career path. So we got the relationship, of course,
I was just about to ask you about that because I thought about you in that scenario, and I want to ask you from your perspective, someone who is a director or founder of a nonprofit organization, what is that feeling like, or what is that decision process like in the sense of, is there a sense of like, I don't want to sell out and I want to be closer to my community and this and this and this, but yet you need the bread? You know what I'm saying? Because I think people don't see what happens on the behind end because Crenshaw, the guy, was always criticizing her about being this sellout, right? But then when he go do the work, he like, oh, I ain't know you needed all that. And yo, I thought about you so bad. I was about to text you because I'm sitting there like, That is like Charlotte goes and does. That's the point of having an organization. They go do work that you don't have to do. So it's so easy for you to sit on your high horse, your high morale horse, and criticize.
Right.
But what you think that part was about, you know, and from your personal take of, you know, when it comes to the money, right, or being closer to the community, what is that about?
Yeah, I think it's so hard, right? It's so hard trying to do that balancing act, especially when you're looking at expanding and partnerships and you're right though, to your point. Thank you for bringing it up. A lot of times people just think, you know, I just hop up and, you know, put on events, and it's like, nope, there's a billion things that happen before we get to this point. And, you know, those things a lot of times involve a lot of money and time, right? And so to be able to explain, you have to have the resources to do that, whether it's personnel, whether it's, you know, having legal, having audience, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much that has to happen to run a business. And I think a lot of times people think nonprofits as just, and I kind of talked about this before on recently on a panel, but like that they think that it's just charity. And so we're so used to Black people, especially Black women, just doing stuff in our community. We've seen our aunts and grandmas, and you know, we're extending that legacy, that they don't understand that there's a foundation that has to happen for that to the work to continue. So on my end, what I really try to make sure is that, you know, it's a couple things. I have a great council around me. So, you know, when I'm between our board and, you know, our leaderships and team members and community members, yourself included, like I have people I can bounce ideas off of or say, this is what's up. What does this look like? What does this feel like? Does this really align to what we feel like starting with today's mission is and where we're headed? And then, so one of the things we look for in partnerships is, you know, really aligning ourselves with partners that have values that center our community. And if it doesn't feel, but it's a gut too, you know, if it doesn't feel right, it's something that I will either put on and say, hey, I'll put on hold and say, hey, I have to revisit this later. Or, you know, it's a flat out, no, this is not aligned. But one of the things I was talking to with our board of director, board member Cal Bacon, you know, and he just really said, you know, all the money is dirty, to be honest. And it just put everything in perspective.
There's no getting past it.
It's all dirty. It's all dirty. So I think the pieces are is like, how can we still honor our community? How can we preserve their integrity? And how can we, you know, really use, you know, money and resources towards empowering and really supporting our community in a really authentic way. And so that's kind of where we are, like on and you know, the partnerships that we're part of, you know, our community rooted, but then there's some that are sustaining, you know what I'm saying, that and so we try to find the pieces that align with where we're headed without selling our souls, you know what I'm saying. Soul not for sale, period.
But that, you know, that like reminds me of what you just said, Kyle said. That reminds me of the theme that a lot of men, when I was coming up, always say, like, you want to meet a woman when you broke. You want to meet a woman when you'll come up, because that's how you know she down. And I remember I had a homeboy who was married young, and I said that to him, and he said, and he was married, he was like, look, I've had to do things within my marriage I could not imagine. So what you have to understand is, I don't care if you're rich, broke, medium, middle class, or whatever, you're gonna go through something.
Yeah.
Like, there ain't no way around
it.
And I think when we saw Issa coming in the beautiful home and then coming in her apartment, it was I think what I take from that is, no matter what choice you make, there's going to be some sort of I guess imperfection.
Yeah.
There's going to be some sort of imperfection, but it asks the question of something that Black people only, I feel like Black people have to think about more than the average. Do I have to be close to make a difference? Do I have to be in the hood to help, you know, make a difference, right? I struggle with that as a writer. Do I have to be miserable to write my best stuff? You know what I mean? Like, do I have to go through the worst of things to write the best stuff for people? Is there a time, because listen, there have been artists I rock with that once they got happy, like Alicia Keys, I ain't really listen to her no more. You know what I'm saying? Or Mary J. Blige, right? But then I don't think about it until you watch their documentaries. You like, man, you was really going through it. I was
Right,
selfish.
right,
So I
right.
think Issa in that scene that represented all of those things of do we as a, and we I feel like we're the only ones that have to feel like we have to carry that
That's
torch.
true. That's real.
Like we have to carry that torch. So when I saw that fantasy sequence, that's what I thought about. That's why I wanted to ask you, like, do you feel like how important is it for us to be like in the trenches, or can we still do work from apart? And I think that's what those fantasies that Issa was having, I think that's what it was speaking to also. Not just her relationship with Nathan and Lawrence in the bathroom. I think it
Right.
spoke to that bigger issue that we deal with as people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and it resonated on such a spiritual level for sure. And I think that's part of it. I think the thing is will you be able to sleep with yourself at night, and will you be able to face yourself in the mirror? Like there's certain things, decisions, and money, and companies that come to the table. That's just bad for the brand. It's just it doesn't represent who we are. It doesn't represent the people that we serve, and there's no way around it, right? And so like and then there's money that's filtered through several organizations that's coming from, probably the same people. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
the banks are coming through one way or another way. So it's really no way around it. But I think one of the ways we think about it is like, am I okay with, the decision that I'm making? But I think there has to be this reprogramming that struggle doesn't have to be our story to authenticity, right? And really having those options to say, we can thrive and still make meaningful impact, and bring as many people along for the ride as possible. So I think those are the key pieces. And I think Issa's kind of navigating that. But, and it's kind of, I think what Molly said, she's probably going to land somewhere in the middle. It's probably not going to be West Hollywood. It's probably not going to be her apartment. It's probably going to be somewhere, probably closer in the middle, or, closer towards, what success looks like for Issa. And I think Issa will continue to kind of navigate what that looks like, whether it's her being as connected to the community or hiring people who are right to continue to lead the organization and do the work. And I think that's something that either way she's going to get that part right.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's the medium that we all shoot for.
Yeah.
Those of us that are on that kind of similar path, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
doing something in nonprofit or you're doing work in what Issa's doing in community investment and things of that nature. But I think that's something that we all strive for, but it doesn't always turn out, and you're going to make
Yeah.
your bumps. And one of the things that we don't talk about enough is that understanding that we're going to make these mistakes,
Yeah.
but we're going to make these mistakes forward. Like you're going to
Yeah.
fall forward
Yeah.
is what it is. But I just think that a lot of people might sleep on the dream sequence, but I think the dream sequences was more important than we probably would give it credit for. Especially when we go back and watch this when everything is done,
Yeah.
I think it really would make sense because Insecure has not done anything that has not made sense.
You're right. Absolutely. I think so too. And I think, again, like they spent so much time and intentionality behind those sequences. Like, normally we get, I mean, we had a couple, episodes of, I remember, the only reference that really comes up is the Cosby Show when they went into this fantasy, kind of season in La La Land. It was a terrible season. But do you remember that?
You said in the Cosby Show?
The Cosby Show, they did like a fantasy. They were like in this fantasy make believe land, and it was anyway
I
super
probably
weird.
checked out.
It's like season 5 or 6. I don't know. It was super weird. It was all bad, but it existed. But where we see these elaborate dream fantasies, and the path, this fork in the road. You're at a fork in the road, and I think that piece is so relevant to people at different parts of their lives. And I think it's really important to kind of create some space to, intentionally daydream or meditate. Meditation is daydreaming is a part of meditation, a piece, aspect of meditation, where you can kind of visualize where you are, where you're headed, and then really kind of reverse engineer how do you want to get there. And I think that's an important piece that a lot of times in our world, especially living in DC, in these big cities where you're always on the race, always, going from one thing to another, that we rarely get time to kind of think to ourselves and kind of really move intentionally towards, the lifestyle and the outcomes that what we want for ourselves and our families.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's something that Issa's in a crossroads with but she's not in the crossroads in a relationship as much as she may think, because technically on her end, she hasn't talked to Lawrence in a year.
Yeah.
So you're actually conjuring up things in your head, which
Oof.
we often do when it comes to, exes. Because I was thinking about this, like I think our generation or our era have to deal with exes way more than the people before us because of
That's
social
true.
media. Social
Yeah.
media. It used to be a time when you was done with someone, you not only were you done, you didn't see them ever again. There was no friendship. It was like no, they really were gone, and you
Yeah.
heard of them through word of mouth at that. But it is really hard to disconnect from people, all together, or they're not here about their process, or they don't come up
Yeah.
on your timeline, or they're not successful, someone
Yeah.
else sharing what they're doing, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like with Issa, I think she's also I'm interested to see how far this is going to go, because we don't really know what Lawrence feels at this moment.
Yeah.
Like technically we don't. We don't really know what Lawrence feels. So that's just something I just want to throw out there. But I definitely think like it's a crossroads, and I think it's in a crossroads in adulthood that doesn't
Mhm.
often get talked about
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
And you remember that those leaps, those jumps that you probably had to make when you think about like going from an apartment to a house, or going from a dorm to an apartment,
Yeah.
those leaps, and think about who was with you then in the beginning and who's not with you anymore.
Don't let's not think about that. It's
I can't, yo. I can't. I can't. I really can't, yo. I can't.
one of the things though that brought up though was about a lot of times we fantasize about people, whether it's work related or celebrities, etc., or exes, but we fantasize the best version of them, right? And that may not be the reality. When you talk about Lawrence and how he showed up in these fantasies or these daydreams, would he be that supportive? Has he been that supportive? Have we seen enough, to know what those outcomes will look like with him? And I think that's really important, like as we begin to make decisions, to really kind of say, what are we, what ideal are we playing with versus what the actual reality of the situation is, and I think that's really important as well, because a lot of times, we pull out the best pieces of that.
I think that's what it is though with Lawrence. Issa, unfortunately, is not necessarily about will Lawrence be this, will Lawrence be that. I think from Issa's perspective, every time she's pulled away from Lawrence, she's seen him at his best. And she
Mm,
didn't get a chance to benefit any of that.
yeah, yeah,
You understand? So I think
yeah,
with Issa, it's a little bit different, because even seeing that little glimpse of him and Condola in the hallway, oh
yeah,
wow, this man, like, he's really can be a good father. Like, I didn't know he'll be able to hold it together, because she doesn't know what we know. And
yeah,
we all got to keep that in mind. She don't know what she knows. Issa left off being like, I don't want to be a part of this, right? Because this is going to be messy. And then you see from your perspective, oh wow, he's really holding it down. I could
yeah.
have been a part of that. Maybe he could have maintained that. So I think with Issa, it's not about if he's going to be there for me. Did I give Lawrence a fair shot? And I think Lawrence, from what we saw in the sneak, did you really ever really fight for Issa?
Oof.
And that's something
Right.
to think about also too. Did you ever really fight? Did you really ever fight for anything in that sense?
Ooh.
What I mean, when your back wasn't against the wall. So
Right.
did you, when Issa said, all right, I want to leave, you were fine with that, right? Or are you, and I sit in the middle of that, because I have a dear friend who reminds me of Lawrence, where he's kind of like, if somebody was to say that to him, he's like, well, obviously you made up your mind. And I know a lot of men who feel that
Mm,
way, but their messaging gets interpreted as you didn't fight for me.
right. Right. And what does fighting for you signify, right? In
What does
modern
that
times,
signify?
so
Yeah.
used to fight, I think we're used to seeing that on films and media and movies. but like, is that really, what you want? Like, is it for ego, or is it like really like for your best self? And I think one of the things I appreciate in a few of my exes who realized that they would no longer love me dearly, but they were not going to be the best support system, was to remove themselves from the situation. You know what I'm saying? And to really kind of let me go emotionally so I can become who I needed to be. So I think there's some emotional maturity that kind of gets lost in that, and saying, hey, it's no way I can make this, especially going, we saw how messy that was with Lawrence and Condola trying to figure out parenthood together, and not wanting to put Issa through that too. Is really important to say, hey, I love you so much. This is not the situation, especially at this time, where I want to involve you in this.
Yeah. I think what I will say, and again, I'm Team Lawrence, but what I will say objectively, if Lawrence could have had said that, if Lawrence could have said, hey, listen, I will work this out and I like you and I
Yeah.
want you there, if he could have navigated something, because I think the thing that
Yeah.
people think about when it comes to decision making or making a plan, they feel like, well, if I say this plan and go wrong, then I'm wrong. Therefore, I shouldn't say a plan. It's not necessarily
Mm,
about that. Like, decision making is important because if you just make a decision, but even if you are wrong, you made a decision. So
yeah.
even if I say to you, me and Condola, I'm going to work this out, Issa, stick with me. This is my plan. And that plan doesn't go through. But
Yeah.
at least you can take from that my effort and I put this into a thought.
Yeah.
And if my plan doesn't go the way it was supposed to, then maybe you don't have an issue with helping me navigate a newer plan and be there for me. I
Yeah.
think one of the issues that even I would say with Lawrence is he kind of he has a defeatist still type of attitude
Ooh.
of like, and this comes from somebody who Team Lawrence, but he has an attitude like once something is presented to him, he's kind of like, well, all right, you know what I mean, and your best intentions don't come out the same. It can be interpreted as, oh, you just giving up again. It's no different from Lawrence on the couch, which unfortunately is something else to be spent to speak about. Of just because you are getting better in life, it doesn't mean you really dealt with some of those issues and those habits that you picked up when you was on that couch. And sometimes I still see those habits from Lawrence on that couch,
Ooh.
even when Lawrence is not off on the couch. I still
Ooh.
see it, and
That's a
I'm
great.
rooting for him, but that's
That's
just
a,
what it is.
that is so good. I think that's so important. You brought up so many good points, but one of the things that kind of just stood out is like, personally, like, that's who you are as my friend. Where I feel like, hey, happy belated birthday to Jay. But like, one of the things I value in our friendship is that you can be like, hey, this person, this issue is recurring. This person has not dealt with that, and it's dressed up now in other places. But this core issue that you're having is still presenting itself in different ways. I think on a parallel, what we see with Nathan is him kind of beginning to tackle those conversations head on, even when he's uncertain and unsure, and saying, hey, I don't know if this is going to work out. I don't know, what's going to happen next. But right here, right now, this is the decision that I'm making. This is how I feel. This is coming from an authentic place. And I just really love that. And then again, it's not about like if Issa and Nathan make it, but it's really about, everybody doing that work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to think to yourself when you're making these decisions in your relationship, what's the bigger risk? The risk in me dealing in this relationship or me not taking this risk at all? Now, me
Mm,
personally as JR, I can't stand not trying.
yeah, me
Like
saying,
that's just who I
same.
am as an
It
individual.
eats me
My
up. It
not
eats me up not
yo,
trying.
my failure list will lap run circles around the best of them. Okay, I have failed on so many levels of life, romance, career. I mean, it's just what
Sorry.
it is, right?
Say
It's just flat on my face, embarrassment. You call it. It's what it is, right? Fired from several jobs, broken up with, left, all of that stuff. But let me tell you, there's never been a time where I have not tried. You
yeah.
know, I can't deal with that, and that's my thing when it comes to I think that the conclusion that Issa has to come to of
Yeah.
understanding, and even with Nathan, I think the growth that we're seeing with him, he actually made a suggestion. He wasn't a reaction. He was like, "Should we live together?" Now, for me, a red flag is always on something. When people get to talking that Moswell, I'm always like, when you get to
I
talking
agree.
Moswell, it ain't the best.
Right.
But in Nathan's case, I will say that that was a good shot for him because I haven't seen Nathan, and someone can call me out if I missed it. I haven't seen Nathan put a lot of initiative in a lot of things. He's been there, but not a lot of things.
Responsive.
He's been response, but that was the first proactive thing I've seen Nathan
Yeah.
do, and that was growth. But I don't know if Issa's in a place where she can recognize that growth.
Oof. You're right. I agree. I completely agree. And I think where we see growth with Issa, we also still see a lot of opportunities for her to grow. So
Yeah, it is, but the greatest character I feel like has grew the most that we're seeing is Molly. I'm 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 rocking with how Molly has been growing, how she has been as a friend, her vulnerability, her approach and being honest and not forcing herself to go out, but telling someone what it is.
yeah.
And I don't know if you was gonna ask on that, but what did you feel about that move with Molly at the end?
I
Uh,
loved a lot of pieces about that. One, her realizing her emotional capacity at that moment and being real honest and saying, hey, I can't push through these emotions that I've been feeling, even though I was really excited about, hanging out with you tonight. That's so important for, I think, women, people in general to find that language. I really was looking forward to it tonight, but today took an emotional toll, especially since it's pandemic, that I'm not necessarily in a space to be, I need to be alone. And I think that's really coming from authentic. So I think just having that language, I think is really important to see. I think too, her not self-sabotaging in that moment and allowing herself to you know, receive love in a different way, was really good as well. So her talking to him and not, feel like she need to text him and kind of all that kind of stuff. And then him being really supportive of her, him going through his own experiences and knowing kind of what that support should look like and showing up for her in a different way, I think was just beautiful from a relationship standpoint, but also as a friendship. Like how does that look? Where it's say, okay, well, I'm not going to take this disappointment personally. Let me show up in a different way, and then we can revisit, whatever we had planned before.
yeah, I mean, nurturing friendship and relationship, you can do that, and you don't have to be a 100% couple.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have
You
to be
just
100%.
care about the other human being.
Yeah, you can just be a decent human being,
Yeah,
and we don't see that displayed enough. And I thought that was a good gesture. I thought it was the thing I resonated with it a lot is that it was well thought out. It was very basic, very simple. You hungry, you probably want some chill time. Here you go, and I'm here. Have a good night. And it was, very simple.
yeah,
It was very affordable. Because a lot of times when you see these things on TV, they make it where the man like has a damn pony at the house waiting on the girl, and she's getting massaged for the day. And I'm like, yo, who can afford that? You know what I mean?
yeah,
But dude is a lawyer, but he did something that was heartfelt.
yeah.
Which shows that he's also paying attention.
I agree. I agree. And a lot of times it does not take throwing money around to really kind of touch the heart and like really make an impact. I think that intentionality, will take her leaps and bounds, and kind of really see where that flourishes. But I just think they have a great foundation where they can be. It seems like she's bringing her full self to this space from a healing space. I think we're always on this journey of healing. I don't think we're ever healed, but like this is where I am at this juncture. This is who I am. This is who I'm presenting myself. I think it's just a really good, what we're seeing with Molly, what I appreciate is that there's a really good um connection between who she wants to be and who she's showing up as. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
very on par. I think that's kind of my personal goal. It's like how do I want to show up and how is that aligning to my actual values and goals and things like that. So I really think she's moving from a very authentic place that is not destructive to herself or to people around her. And then even still with her making time for Issa to, even after this hard day, to say, you know, I have 30 seconds to kind of drop some nuggets in here for you and, you know, show support, but then I need to kind of navigate my own time as well.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful setting of that we don't put eyes on enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's dope. And I think what the pandemic has shown us, to what you just spoke about, is everything is not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not the end of the world. Like I can take this moment, I can say no.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that the wife and the kids that I plan to have are ended. Like it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that the husband that you was that's going to be for you is not going to be there. It's one day. It's one moment.
Absolutely.
It's one time, and it's your time.
Yeah.
And also, too, if you don't practice having those moments enough for yourself, how well will you be in a functional relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Hence why we have so many dysfunctional relationships that are people that has been together, but they never took that time to learn how they can function and stuff like that. And then they're trying to figure that out while they're together. And I think there's a valuable nugget in there. So I just thought that part was just excellent. I thought it was dope. I'm enjoying that ride with that. But I got to tell you, Charlotte, before you go, I'm going to be honest with you. It ain't looking good for your girl, Issa. It just ain't looking good. I'm just going to be 100 with you just to bring it back. It ain't looking good. I'm being 100 with you. I know y'all was team this and team that, but now that we're actually seeing all this, it ain't looking good. I don't want to say I told you so because I want the best, but it ain't looking good romantically. Career-wise, yeah, but romantically, it ain't looking good, yo.
That is so fun. All right, I'll let you speak, Ray. You got 3 minutes before we close out. And but I think one of the things that I don't know, you know, it's 2 episodes and we're trying to get so much in 2 more episodes. Did you get the request? What, Ray? Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Hey,
What's up,
Ray.
brother Red?
What's going on, y'all? I'm trying to be able to make a conscious effort to speak with intellectual Black people every week. So speaking with y'all is a step in that right direction.
Oh,
Thanks,
thank
brother.
you.
And happy belated to you, Jay Hall.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But like, I don't know if y'all see it though. Like, I'm sorry that I had to go ahead and get into the silly mode of things, but Nathan is a ticking time bomb. It's a ticking time bomb. And like, as you said earlier, this show has certain scenes where it's all intentional. Like, they're not saying things just because.
Nope.
Right. So like, let's rewind back a little bit. Nathan, barbershop, co-worker, with your bipolar ass. Didn't say a word. Bottle that in. I said before that Nathan and Lawrence was going to be in the same room and there's going to be a tension. You saw what the next episode seems like, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to come into that. I bawled out laughing within the first 3 minutes when Nathan said that he wanted to move in with Issa. Because when was the last time he moved in with somebody he loved? What happened with that?
His cousin.
Exactly. And who did we see 5 minutes later? Cousin hanging out.
I missed that completely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, this is all intentional stuff. And it's gonna turn it, and I feel it's gonna turn into a conversation that Jay Hall said earlier. I did all this stuff for you, and you thinking about this man and his baby, his sometimey self that I talked about earlier. Done. And who is his homeboy? I don't like that.
Yeah.
Who homeboy?
In the preview that they showed next week, they showed Nathan's homeboy saying, "I don't like that." You know. Yeah.
This man is
I was trying to wait. I heard you, but I didn't.
But I also wanted to be able to point out that these little dreams and these hallucination type of sequences. You ever notice that Issa's flying over the world, hanging out with Ty Dolla $ign, doing these panels, doing all this stuff, but then whenever she gets home, Nathan is always home. He's never out somewhere else. Guess who was always home before? Lawrence. Lawrence is always home. Are you gonna have the same resentment for him that you had for Lawrence back then?
No, Nathan's working. She's talking about the barbershop and like.
Yeah, each time she came home, Nathan said he was working.
Yeah, working.
But you know what though? I will say this though, Red. When she came home in that second dream, that home coming home was a little bit different than the first one.
It was a little
Because
bit.
yeah, I don't even know if Nathan was working at the bar. Like he was like, yeah, the guys in group said hi to you and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I was like, what does that mean? And really quick, me and Charlotte was texting each other after the last episode. There's been a lot of visual things that they've been putting in front of us that we might miss, like when Issa called Lawrence, her kitchen was trash.
Yeah.
And when Lawrence picked up, his kitchen was like orderly. So to your point, what you're saying, like her coming home and those are intentional. And I am interested to see how that fold out. I totally agree with you on that. There was a difference in when she came home in that second dream sequence. Because the first one, Nathan opens up a second barbershop. And then the second one, he's in group therapy.
He's in group therapy. And as there are certain aspects of the first season we're seeing repeated right now. The sheer mention of Ty Dolla $ign mentioned in this episode alone shows you like, oh yeah, we're going to go back a little bit. We're going to retrace.
What did they mention Ty Dolla $ign before? I kind of remember, but I can't like visualize.
The first season, Issa was like, yo, I'm hanging out with Daniel. I should hang out with Daniel because he's blowing up as a producer. He did a joint with Ty Dolla $ign. She's talking with Ty Dolla $ign in the mirror, kicking it, having fun and all that stuff.
That's the pool, Red. Forgot about that.
She's looking for the good life. Is she going to get the good life with Nathan? Because she's seeing it in herself. It's materializing in her own efforts. Is Nathan actually something that is accentuating it or whatever it is? Because what she thought that she saw with Lawrence was not manifested yet. But now, like Jay's all said, oh, I see him as a parent. And he seems to be well adjusted. He has a better job now. He's out here balancing up. He got a clean kitchen. Oh, wow. This is weird. I didn't see this.
It's the little things. It's the little things that I can appreciate.
He probably got her a ring and not that mall joint that you gave me before. Like, I didn't stick around long enough to see this materialize. But what I'm seeing with Nathan is a work in progress, but he's acknowledging it, although it's a little shaky at times. But yes, I'm here.
I agree. You made some valid points, and I think it will be interesting to see how he adjusts. I think we've only seen Nathan. Well, he did move out into his own apartment, so he's in his own apartment now.
He's in his own place. Yeah.
So him live with Andrew. We got the flashback with him and his cousin, but him and Andrew were really seem well adjusted. Together.
Yeah.
So I think there's still some opportunity there to say,
right. But I know that barbershop scene where he got cussed out by Boy, that's a clear type of situation where it's like, all right, stuff is bottled in.
What he want to do? Swing back? Want to fight him?
I mean, like if somebody came at you like that at work, you wouldn't just say nothing.
Yeah, I'm confused though. It's nothing to really kind of say that he.
I'm not saying he should swing at dude, but it was more of like, all right.
I would say this though, Red. To your point, he is showing his layers of vulnerability. Nathan is, because Issa walked in the bathroom and Nathan was taking his meds, and to take your meds in front of someone else speaks volumes. It says a lot. And to your point, though, if he's disarming himself and becoming more and more vulnerable, and to what Charlotte was saying, and doing this work to be at this certain level, and it doesn't come out the way it's supposed to. To your point, I don't know, and I don't know if its explosion would be necessarily like violent, but it doesn't have to necessarily. It may not be pretty.
It's the prerequisite to a bigger conversation, especially when you add Lawrence into the picture officially.
Yep.
Now we're in a space together. We're in a situation like that. Like my coworker is my coworker. What? I see him 9 to 5, and I'll never see him again until Monday through Friday. That's fine. But we're talking about something that has to deal with my personal life. Like this man is affecting my personal life, and I never met him until this very moment. And that's what the next seems like it's going to be.
Yeah. I agree.
So we have a lot to think about for next episode, which I feel like will be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then
And
they're
there's 2 episodes left, so they got to go out with a bang.
they
I
got
got a feeling. I got a feeling that the next episode.
um
I got a
the,
feeling that the next episode is going to be a bang, and the last episode will be kind of like a wrap up.
yeah.
I feel like the way Game of Thrones used to do, where like their second from last episode was really the big one.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a feeling next episode is definitely going to be must see.
Yeah,
I agree.
are we gonna get a Dwayne Wade baby please episode? I don't know. But
That doesn't age as well no more, unfortunately. It'd be too many think pieces nowadays. Nobody can accept that, but those of us that lived through it back then.
Right.
but Issa and the writers, they come from that era where they had to see that. Who knows? I mean, trying to make a joke out of that, like who knows what they do? They come from that era like us, so
That's real.
I wouldn't be surprised if it turns into.
Indeed. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today for this recap for the do's and the don'ts. We will see y'all back next week, same time, same place. Y'all have a great week. Great week. I think the key takeaway is live intentionally. Spend some time to daydream. Do y'all have any closing remarks?
Red.
Respect yourself. You can't respect others until you respect yourself.
Real talk.
Do the work.
All right, do the work. All right, so you can find Red at Redhead PG, I believe, on all social media. You can find J Hall at J Hall Society across all social media platforms. You can find Starting With Today at Starting With Today across all social media platforms, except for Twitter. We're starting W Today. I am Charlene. You can find me at True_Charlene across all social media platforms. Y'all have a great week. Be blessed.
Deuces.
Bye-bye.